Going back up again, come back in. There's more that the Lord wants to do. Josh mentioned this story last night, and it's one of the most formational passages for me that the Lord has used in my life, and it's in John 21 where Jesus has suffered on the cross. He's died. He's risen from the dead. Some people have seen him, but not Peter yet. And in John 21, there's this interesting phrase that Peter says. He tells the other disciples, "I'm going fishing," which is just, it's interesting because that's Peter, like, everything that I thought was going to happen by following Jesus, like, it's failed. I did the thing that I swore I would never do. I betrayed Jesus. I'm just going back to what I know. You know, like fishing is what's familiar to me. I'm going back to what I know. And that's marked part of my story. I'm sure it's marked part of your stories as well, that you kind of fail in an epic way. You blow it. You do something that you're like, I swore I would never be this kind of man, or I swore I would never do this again. And here I am. And so the best thing that I can do is just kind of go back to what's familiar. You know, it's like that's all that I offer to the world, if even that. I'm just going back to fishing. And there's this profound verse where in verse 9 of John 21, they see Jesus and they realize it's Jesus. And Peter realizes it's Jesus. And if you're familiar with that passage, he jumps out of the boat and he swims to the shore. The other disciples are like, well, we don't want to get wet. We'll row to the shore. Somebody's got to get this boat to the shore. And this is the passage in verse 9. It says, when they got out on land, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish lying on it and bread. And man, what I love is here's Jesus standing on the shore, not with his arms crossed, not like, Peter, I told you so. I told you this was going to happen. It's not Jesus with a frown. Jesus has built this fire. And not only that, he's already made breakfast for him. He's got fish there. He's like, I've prepared everything. I'm inviting you to myself. And I love that moment. And there's not a word in Scripture that's wasted. And when you read Scripture and there's details given that feel maybe unimportant to the story. And it's like he could have just said Jesus was there and he was there with breakfast. But he says a charcoal fire, which is something that should make us like, why would he mention that it's a charcoal fire? Why would that matter? Well, in the story of Peter, when he denies Jesus, I just want to read a couple of these verses to you. In John chapter 18, this is where Peter 3 times denies Jesus, just like Jesus said he would. And Peter says, no, I'll like everybody else might deny you, but I'm ready to die with you. Here's one of those denials. Verse 17 of John 18, the servant girl who is the doorkeeper said to Peter, you aren't one of this man's disciples, one of his followers too, are you? I'm not, he said. Now the servants and the officials had made a charcoal fire because it was cold. They were standing there warming themselves, and Peter was standing with them warming himself. Some of you guys have the type of memories that are formed around smells. It's really interesting. I have things like that where I can, without even thinking about it, I smell something and it just takes me right back to a moment in my story, a moment of pain, a moment where I blew it. It's like my brain has associated that type of smell with this memory. It's just a big deal that when Jesus builds this fire, it's a charcoal fire. And in Peter's story, probably the lowest moment in his life, Jesus creates that same environment, the same sound, the same vision, the same smells, and is like, I'm going to redeem this part of your memory. He builds this charcoal fire. I want to share a bit of a story with you guys just from my own life. And so I'll I don't want to call you into a type of vulnerability that's like, well, you go there, I'm not going there, it's risky, but you should go there. The end of 2018, 2019, our lives fell apart in a really big way. PTSD is a pretty big part of my story, but it took me a really long time to name it. Really long time, a decade or more. And there was a lot of shame around that. There was a lot of weakness. There was a lot of like, why can't I just get through this? That's not what it is. That's for people who really struggle, or that's for people who are really weak. That's not me. It took a long time to name it. And in 2018, for a number of reasons, it started to come up in a way that was new and that was scary for me and scary for my family. And I had a night where it just felt like the enemy, I said yesterday, we want to be wise to the schemes of the enemy. And in my own life, and it's probably different in your life, but in my own life, the way for the enemy to get it right for me is to get me in a moment where I'm just isolated. I feel alone. I feel like there's nobody who can carry part of what I'm carrying. And then in that moment of isolation, to somehow attach shame. And shame is the type of thing that says, not you've done wrong, which is good. That's conviction from God, but like you are wrong. And there was a comment that my wife made to me that attached to a couple parts of my story and lies that I believe. And I spiraled really quick. It was for me what's called the dark night of the soul, which is, it's a scary place to be. And so we had just gotten this dog, and I just had this kind of breakdown type moment, and I gave away our family dog, and then came home, lied about it to my wife and kids, and said, the dog got sick, and I had to put it down, and it was a really dark time. And the brothers who at that time were in the foxhole with me, I shared this with them. I was like, man, I really felt this, like, this is a moment in my life that I can either careen into darkness or I can run back to light. So it's like, I'm going to run back to Jesus, run back to brotherhood. And so I shared this with the guys who were closest to me in my life at the time. And the response was kind of like my deepest fear. My deepest fear is like, if I really let people into this, I felt like I was too much for my family, too much for other people. And I shared it, and in the months after that, the data was that's real. I and my family were just kind of thrown away in a way that was looking back is really cruel. And during that time, Josh got on a plane and he came out here, and we were hanging out with a buddy of mine, fellow friend, and I couldn't understand why he would want to be around me. So I was like, I'm going to tell him everything. I'm not holding back anything. I'm going to tell him every detail. Because during that time, the data around my life was like, I am too much. And so it kind of scared me that somebody was moving towards me during that moment. And so I was like, I'm just going to share everything. I'm not going to hold back. I'm going to say what happened. I'm going to talk about the motivations behind it, the things that I was believing. And so as I unloaded like everything that I had done, Josh's first response, we're sitting there and we're smoking cigars, and his first response was, I'm really proud of you. And I was like, did you not hear anything that I just said? Do I need to repeat it for you? Do I need to simplify it? I was like, I don't understand that. Why would you say that? And he said, you stood on the edge of the abyss looking into darkness. And rather than jumping, you ran back to Jesus and you ran back to community. And that's a really big deal. And Josh, in that moment, just ministered the voice and the presence of Jesus to me in a way that if that wouldn't have happened, I'm just not sure what our lives would look like right now. I was ready to run away from everything and everyone. In my story, there's really significant things that have happened around fires. That's why I resonate so much with this story in Peter's life. There's something that happens when I'm standing around a fire pit or when I'm smoking cigars with close brothers where it's like walls kind of come down and there's vulnerability and there's, you can share stories, and there's nothing necessarily magical about a fire pit. It might be a different room, a different place for you. I remember when we were coming back here to start this church, Josh and I sat down with Blake around a fire. And I told Blake, because I'd asked him to leave the state he grew up in, the city he had tons of friends in, the church that he met Jesus in, and I was on staff at. I had asked him, I want you to leave that, come with me, let's go plant a church. And I just felt convicted that, like, if you're coming, you got to know what you're coming into. So it's like, I don't want to hold this back from you. So I did the same thing, just shared everything that had happened, because I was like, in a lot of ways, like, you're walking into a pretty fraught position, because these brothers who were there in that moment, like, they're still in the city. And I was like, you need to know. And what I experienced in that moment from Blake was the exact same thing. There were tears from Blake, and there was presence from Blake, and there was what people would call attunement, which is when you share parts of your story that what you've experienced is people running away from you. It does something in your brain. Like, there's actually some science behind this where parts of your brain just get disintegrated. And the way that healing happens so often from the Lord is when you experience what's called attunement in that moment. When you experience, like, this is a moment where my brain, my body, my soul knows what's going to happen. I'm going to share this, and I'm going to experience again betrayal and abandonment. And when you experience in that moment connection and attunement, the brain itself, like, starts to heal. It's crazy how God has created our brains. And that was a really powerful moment. And what I just want you guys to consider is, do you have a fire pit? Do you have friends around you? It's part of what I mentioned last night with the 2 a.m. phone call. Do you have people that in that moment, it's crazy in the dark night of the soul, that things that you're like, I would never do that. I would never. The team that I served on when we were in Afghanistan in 2005, since 2005, over half of that team has committed suicide. And I got to the point where, and I still am, like, I get this kind of anxiety when I get a phone call from a number that I don't recognize. Some of you guys know that, like, when you call me, I never answer the phone. And there's a reason. It's like when I get phone calls, I'm like, leave a voicemail, send me a text message. I want to be able to prepare for this somehow, It's because of those memories. And you need men that you can call when life hits the fan. When you have that dark night of the soul, because frankly, I didn't understand it. When guys would make that decision, like, I just didn't understand it. I was like, man, you're leaving behind a wife and kids, and I cannot wrap my head around how can things get so dark that that's the solution. Until that night in 2018. And I remember, like, what felt so logical to me in that moment is my wife will be sad for a while, but probably she'll find the guy that she should have married. And I remember thinking it's going to be really hard for my kids, but they'll get through it, and they'll end up with a better dad, and so probably it's the most loving thing that I can do for them. Which, as I say it, is like, no. The most loving thing for them to experience is a dad who looked at darkness, ran back to Jesus in community, pursued healing, said that Jesus in life is worth it. But in that moment, it was like, this makes the most sense. You need people you can call in those moments. I want to show you two of my favorite videos, just little clips from movies around friendship and the importance of friendship. So roll that first one. Okay. I could point out some things that might be unhealthy about that. You need friends that are going to actually call you to Jesus in a way that's like, but that scene for me, I love that scene. And I have friends like that. You know, I have friends that I know if I said, you can't ask me any questions, I need you to do this for me, they would do it. But you need friends that are deeper than that. You know, you need friends that in moments like that are going to be like, hold on. What's going on in your life? So I'm not talking about the kind of friends who just are like, I'm going to do whatever you say. You need deep friendship. Now I love this. This is actually, the second one is my favorite clip on friendship from any movie ever. If you've not seen the movie Tombstone, you need to watch it. Oof. Man, I love that. Val Kilmer, you know, he's like, what are you doing? If you know that story, he's sick. He's got tuberculosis. He's going to die. I was like, what are you doing? You're sick. You shouldn't be here. Like, I'm here because Wyatt Earp's my friend. The guy's like, man, I got lots of friends. What are you talking about? Like, surely you have other friends who don't need you to die in this moment. He just says profoundly, I don't. Some of you guys have lots of friends, lots of relationships around you. But I think what that scene reflects is like, do you have the one or two or three friends? You're like, this is different. This is different. I have a lot of acquaintances. I have a few friends. What I want in my life is to grow old and finish well. There's a movie, I won't show you a clip from it, but there's a movie, my favorite actor in the world is Robert Duvall, and there's a movie called Secondhand Lions, where if you've seen this, they're sitting on a porch, they've become these old men, they got tons of money, but they're just sitting on this porch, and I told Josh, I want to be those kind of friends, you know? It's like, if the Lord, likely because of poor decisions that I've made in probably unwise risks that I take with hobbies and lifestyle, I'm definitely probably meeting Jesus before my wife. But I told Josh, like, if the Lord calls Nancy and Kristen home, can we just go get an old rundown house like that and sit on the porch with shotguns, you know, like that? You need the kind of brothers that you're known by. You need the kind of brothers who know you in such a way that they could do harm. Friendship like this is risky because it means sharing parts of your life and story that people can turn around and do a lot of harm to you with. That's what I experienced in 2018. It was like, not only was there betrayal and abandonment, but this thing that I shared was weaponized and then used to really hurt me and my family. And that's the risk that comes with this kind of friendship. Because you do need to be known, not by everybody. It's foolish to be known by everybody. But you need the kind of friends that's like, man, they know things about me and I know things about them that we could really cause each other a lot of harm. And it takes time. It takes intentionality. It's not something that you can just create. It's not something that we're like, join a small group at Frontline and then you guys, be this thing. You need some sort of a framework for it, but it takes time. And I think you're going to go through seasons where like you have it and some that you don't. And I think what's really beautiful is that passage in Proverbs 18 that says there's people who have many companions. It's like many friends often leads to ruin, but there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. There's a type of friendship, and Jesus is that friend. The thing that was so powerful about the moment with Josh and the moment with Blake was that what they did in that moment was just reminded me of the type of friend that Jesus is to me. That's what good friends do. Because there's also times with both of these brothers have called things out in my life that they're like, hey man, this isn't okay, and I want to call you to follow Jesus in this way. That's what you need from friends, not ones who just agree with everything you say and are like, hey, this is great. Whatever your decision you're going to make is great. I'm going to support it. You need friends like Jesus who tell you the truth and do it with love. And I also want to encourage you, man, like, if you don't have those kind of friends, Jesus is that friend to you. And until you experience that kind of friendship with Jesus, you'll never be able to experience it with others well, because you'll always demand something of other people that they can't actually be. Only Jesus is the type of friend who truly will always be there, will never abandon you. And until you have that kind of friendship with Jesus, you'll never pursue friendship with other people, or you'll be the kind of friend that demands that other brothers be Jesus for you, and you'll crush them with your demands. But when you're like, man, I do have friendship with Jesus, he sticks closer than a brother, it frees the relational weight from your other brothers to say like, hey, I don't need you to be Jesus for me, and I know that you don't need me to be Jesus for you. I think before you pursue this kind of friendship also, like, you have to be the type of friend that you want to have. You can't just sit there waiting for other brothers to do this. Like, you need to do this for other brothers, all right? Maybe just consider, like, where's my fire pit moment? Where's that room that's where I feel free? Maybe it's out in the woods. Maybe it's taking a long drive in the country, whatever it is. What's that place where I just kind of feel my guard coming down? And then who's in the seat next to me? Maybe today it's just, man, I need to pray that the Lord will bring somebody like that into my life. Maybe you have that type of friend and you need to, with courage, just say, hey, man, can we pursue a deeper depth of friendship together? Can we be like those kind of friends? Let me invite you to stand. I want to pray for you, and then we'll worship and continue. Father, I thank you for the courage in each of these men to come here and to, in whatever way, say Jesus is worth it and that I'm desperate for Jesus. I pray that you would meet with them today and in the coming days and weeks and months and years. God, we want to finish well. We want to be men who, if you give us lots of years and we end up gray-haired and immobile, we want to be men who are tender, open to friendship, joyful, carrying scars, but not protecting ourselves. We need your help. So, Spirit of God, would you help us to lift our voices to worship you, open our eyes, open our hearts, open our minds as we continue this morning. In your name, Christ, amen.